If you're over 60, there's a nightly habit you probably don't even think about. One that could silently increase your stroke risk. Without any pain or warning, right there in your sleep. No chest discomfort, no sudden speech changes, no dizziness to tip you off. You simply drift off feeling perfectly normal, and then, by morning, everything shifts. You might wake up disoriented, struggling to speak, or unable to lift an arm. A stroke, silent, sudden, and utterly life-altering, and it all stems from something as fundamental as how you sleep. As a brain specialist, I've witnessed this far too often, and it's not always due to smoking, unhealthy eating, or lack of exercise. It's frequently caused by common sleep habits that most older adults assume are completely safe. But they aren't. Today, I'm going to guide you through 9 dangerous sleeping positions and evening routines that could be significantly raising your risk of stroke, brain hemorrhages, or sudden blood pressure surges, particularly during those quiet hours when your brain is most susceptible. If you're over 60 or have a loved one who is, this video genuinely could save a life, perhaps even your own. So, pay close attention. Let's get started. Before we get into it, if you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any future health insights designed especially for you. If you find this video helpful, please type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 feet to help me improve my content for you. First, let's talk about sleeping completely flat on your back, with no pillow, a supine position where your head is level with your body. It often feels harmless, even quite comfortable. Picture this, lying perfectly flat at night, arms by your sides, no pillow supporting your head. For many older individuals, this is a habit ingrained over decades. Some believe it alleviates back pain, while others feel it broadens the chest. But here's a crucial detail almost no one discusses. Sleeping flat on your back, without any head elevation, can silently escalate your stroke risk during the night, and you might not detect any symptoms. When you lie entirely flat, your head rests at the same level as your heart. While this might seem natural, physiologically, it's problematic, especially for older adults. You see, as we age, the blood vessels in our neck and brain lose their elasticity. Blood simply doesn't flow as efficiently. The veins tasked with draining blood from your brain now have to contend with gravity. This means, instead of flowing smoothly, blood can pool, slow down, and even form clots, particularly in the early morning when blood pressure naturally increases. And once blood clots develop during sleep, they don't remain silent for long. A single small clot in a constricted vessel can lead to catastrophic consequences: slurred speech, facial paralysis, lasting disability, or even death. Let me share the story of Mr. Leonard Whitaker, a 77-year-old retired mechanic from Michigan. He was strong, independent, and still actively repaired lawnmowers in his garage. Every night, he would lie perfectly flat in bed. No pillow, just the mattress, with his hands folded on his chest. This was a habit he'd adopted from his Navy days, one he claimed helped him sleep profoundly. One morning, his wife, Mary, found him semi-awake but completely unable to speak. His eyes were open, yet one side of his face had drooped. He couldn't lift his right arm. At the emergency room, a scan revealed a clot in his left middle cerebral artery, an ischemic stroke, which occurs when blood thickens and clots within narrowed vessels, often during sleep. His carotid arteries were stiff. Blood had pooled excessively, and it was directly linked to his sleeping posture. Doctors acted swiftly to dissolve the clot, but Leonard was never fully the same. His speech is now slower, and he relies on a walker. Every evening, Mary meticulously props him up on a wedge pillow, something they both bitterly wish they had known about years prior. What many people fail to grasp is that when you lie flat, particularly with age-related vascular changes, venous drainage from the brain is significantly impaired. In simpler terms, your brain's internal plumbing system slows down, and stagnant blood can become a prime environment for clots to form. Factor in natural overnight dehydration and reduced oxygen levels, and you have a perfect storm brewing. This flat-lying position is particularly hazardous for seniors with conditions like hypertension, atrial fibrillation, or sleep apnea, a history of carotid artery disease, or for those taking blood pressure medications that might cause their pressure to drop too low overnight. The safest adjustment, slight head elevation, ideally around 30 degrees. This helps gravity aid blood flow, decreases intracranial pressure, and ensures your brain receives more consistent oxygen. Even just 1 or 2 well-chosen pillows can make a remarkable difference. Always select a pillow that supports your neck's natural curve, rather than one that forces your chin forward. Some mistakenly believe this is merely about comfort. It's not. It's fundamentally about optimizing blood flow to the most critical organ in your body. It's about safeguarding your independence, your memory, your capacity to speak, to walk, to simply be yourself. Leonard once told me, tears in his eyes, "Doc, if only someone had warned me that sleeping flat could cause this, I would have changed it decades ago." Let me be that messenger for you today. But if that sounds worrying, just wait until you discover what happens when you sleep face down, where your neck can bend at precisely the wrong angle, potentially constricting the vital arteries supplying your brain. If you're still watching and these insights are resonating, please comment one below so I know you're following along. Now, let's proceed to point number 2. Sleeping face down, or in the prone position. Many older adults make a subtle but significant mistake every night. It feels soothing, familiar, even completely benign, sleeping on your stomach. Perhaps you started this to alleviate back pain, or maybe you enjoy the gentle pressure on your chest, finding it makes you feel safe and snug. However, I am here to share something your primary care doctor might not have emphasized. Sleeping face down can be one of the most hazardous positions for your brain. Medically speaking, this is known as the prone position. While it might pose little harm to younger bodies, as we age, our circulation naturally slows, arteries stiffen, and oxygen levels tend to drop more readily, particularly during deep sleep cycles. When you sleep face down, several alarming issues start to occur. Your neck is forced into a sharp turn to one side, simply so you can breathe. This posture compresses your vertebral arteries, crucial vessels that carry oxygen-rich blood from your spine to the rear of your brain, a region vital for balance, coordination, and even maintaining consciousness. And there's more. This position also exerts pressure on your carotid arteries, especially if your head sinks into a soft pillow or mattress. Blood flow decelerates veins, which are meant to drain blood away from the brain, become kinked. Stagnant blood then accumulates, thickens, and in vulnerable individuals, it forms dangerous blood clots. These clots can remain quiet for hours, poised until the early morning blood pressure surge occurs, dislodging them and sending them straight into your brain. The outcome, a stroke, often severe, sometimes even deadly. I'll always remember Mrs. Ethel Lawson, an 82-year-old retired schoolteacher from Ohio. She came to me following a terrifying incident. Her daughter had discovered her one morning lying awkwardly on her stomach, her speech garbled and her left side unresponsive. Ethel was immediately taken to the hospital, where scans revealed a large ischemic stroke impacting her cerebellum, the brain region responsible for coordination and balance. But the root cause wasn't high cholesterol or atrial fibrillation. Ethel's carotid arteries had narrowed with age, and the many hours she spent sleeping face down with her neck twisted had restricted blood flow just enough for a clot to develop. By morning, irreversible damage had occurred. Ethel survived, but she no longer drives and struggles to walk without a walker. And every time we meet, she tells me, "I never realized something as simple as my sleeping position could almost cost me my life." Here's the scientific explanation. In the prone position, neck rotation can restrict vertebral artery blood flow by over 40%, particularly if your pillow or mattress pushes your head backward. Chest compression can diminish lung expansion, leading to lower oxygen saturation, which then adds extra strain on your heart and brain. Furthermore, obstructed airflow can increase carbon dioxide retention, further disrupting brain blood flow and often leading to vascular instability. As we get older, our tolerance for oxygen drop significantly diminishes. Our body's natural reactive time slows down. A 30-year-old might awaken, gasp, and instinctively readjust. However, at 70 or 80, that same oxygen dip could go entirely unnoticed, silently preparing the ground for a nighttime stroke. Moreover, if you snore, suffer from sleep apnea, or take sedatives or sleep medications, sleeping face down becomes even more perilous. Your body's responsiveness is reduced, your airway is more prone to collapse, and the likelihood of a silent, oxygen-deprived stroke dramatically increases. If you or a loved one routinely sleeps on their stomach, I strongly advise you to try shifting to your side with a firm pillow that keeps your head properly aligned. Even better, sleep slightly elevated on your left side to help safeguard both brain and heart circulation. These seemingly minor adjustments aren't merely about comfort, they are fundamentally about survival. Because what feels cozy could be exerting lethal pressure on the very arteries that sustain your brain. Remember, it's not solely about your sleeping position. It's also about where pressure accumulates while you rest. Up next, we'll discuss a sleep habit embraced by millions of seniors, especially those with hip or shoulder discomfort, one that silently obstructs blood flow and can lead to abrupt nighttime strokes. And ironically, it often occurs on your most comfortable side. Habit number 3. Sleeping with a heavy blanket over your head. There's a subtle, deeply ingrained personal habit many seniors carry into their later years. Something reassuring, almost childlike, that we perform without a second thought. Pulling the blanket up and over our heads at night. Perhaps it's to muffle noise from a snoring partner or a worry fan. Maybe the room feels chilly or too brightly lit. Or perhaps, like many raised in cooler homes, we discover a unique sense of peace within that cozy cocoon of warmth and silence. But for older adults, this seemingly innocent nighttime ritual can silently become lethal. When you sleep with a thick blanket covering your head, you're not merely blocking light or sound, you're severely restricting airflow. Throughout the night, oxygen levels plummet within that confined space. And carbon dioxide, the waste gas we exhale, dangerously accumulates around your nose and mouth. While your younger body may have tolerated this habit decades ago, at 60, 70, or 80, your brain simply doesn't recuperate in the same manner. Low oxygen and elevated carbon dioxide levels during sleep heighten your risk of blood thickening, and in susceptible brains, this leads to the formation of dangerous blood clots. Allow me to share the case of Mr. Richard Hale, an 81-year-old retired postmaster from Iowa. A quiet, contemplative man, Richard always preferred the sensation of sleeping in complete darkness. He mentioned he'd been pulling the covers over his head since childhood, especially during winter. His wife had affectionately teased him about it, saying he resembled a bundled-up caterpillar each night. Yet it made him feel secure and tranquil. So, every evening, he would tuck himself in tightly, pulling a thick quilt over his head before drifting into sleep. Then, one morning, Richard didn't emerge from bed. His wife, growing alarmed, found him groggy and unresponsive, barely able to open his eyes. When paramedics arrived, his blood oxygen levels were perilously low. A hospital scan confirmed he had suffered a silent stroke in the early morning hours. A clot had formed and lodged deep within a small brain vessel, not due to atherosclerosis or atrial fibrillation, but from oxygen deprivation during sleep combined with age-related blood thickening. And yes, a significant contributing factor was his habit of sleeping with restricted airflow under a heavy blanket. You see, during deep sleep, particularly REM cycles, your brain demands a consistent flow of oxygen. When you're beneath the covers, rebreathing stale air, your oxygen levels plunge, your heart then compensates by beating faster, and your blood pressure starts to fluctuate. These erratic spikes and dips place immense stress on already fragile vessels. Combine this with mild dehydration, sluggish circulation, and age-hardened arteries, and you've forged an ideal environment for a clot to develop. And here's the truly terrifying aspect. You might never even realize it's occurring. You drift off feeling warm and secure, but your brain is slowly suffocating. And by the time the damage is complete, you may awaken as a profoundly different person. If you awaken at all, medical research indicates that even mild hypoxia, reduced oxygen levels during sleep, is associated with a significantly elevated risk of stroke and cognitive decline in older adults. Crucially, this isn't a risk limited only to those diagnosed with sleep apnea. It can impact anyone whose breathing is disturbed by their environment or sleeping posture. If you habitually sleep with a blanket over your head, even if only during the colder months, it's imperative to reevaluate this routine. Instead of pulling up the covers, consider using a sleep mask to block light or earplugs for sound. Maintain your room at a comfortably warm temperature, and invest in breathable lightweight bedding. This isn't about minor discomfort. It's about profound protection, ensuring your brain receives the vital oxygen it requires to restore, repair, and endure through the night. Because strokes don't exclusively affect other people. They strike good people, conscientious people. People like Richard, who had no inkling that a lifelong habit could nearly rob him of his ability to walk, speak, and remember. He now sleeps with a wedge pillow, soft lighting, and his blanket carefully folded below his shoulders. He once confided, "I had no idea something so seemingly safe could be so perilous." And he's certainly not alone, because what we remain unaware of can indeed harm us, particularly during sleep. But as hazardous as a heavy blanket over the head might be, it pales in comparison to our next habit. This is one that millions of older Americans depend on for comfort, yet it could be significantly obstructing blood flow to the brain. starting with the way you position your arm beneath your pillow. Let me illustrate precisely how this occurs. If you're still watching and finding these insights valuable, please comment one below to let me know you're with me. Now, let's continue with point number 4. Fourth, let's address sleeping upright in a recliner, a common practice among seniors experiencing back pain. For many older adults, sleep becomes increasingly challenging with age. Not merely falling asleep, but remaining asleep without pain or discomfort. Aching joints, rigid spines, acid reflux, and shortness of breath often lead to a single prevalent solution: the recliner chair. You might know someone who has entirely abandoned their bed for it, or perhaps that someone is you. Night after night, sleeping in a recliner morphs into a routine. A soft blanket, the faint hum of the television, the chair perfectly angled. It offers a sense of security. But what feels safe can, at times, pose a quiet danger. As a brain specialist, I've observed how this position, sleeping upright in a reclined chair, can slowly, silently elevate the risk of stroke overnight. You see, the human body is designed to rest flat, allowing blood and oxygen to flow uniformly. However, when you sleep in a semi-upright position, perhaps at 45 to 60 degrees, you're placing your circulatory system at a distinct disadvantage, particularly as you age. In this posture, gravity performs two critical actions. It draws blood downward, away from your brain, and it compresses the major veins in your legs and hips. The consequence is sluggish blood flow, pooling in the lower limbs, and a significantly elevated risk of clot formation. While this isn't as perilous for younger individuals, the scenario changes dramatically after age 60. Blood becomes thicker due to age-related dehydration. Vessels narrow from decades of strain. The heart pumps less effectively, and that slow-moving blood pooling in your lower body can indeed form clots. These are small, sticky, silent threats that can travel upward during the night or in the early morning. All it takes is one of these clots to lodge in a brain vessel, and the damage is done before you even open your eyes. Let me introduce you to Mrs. Barbara Keene, 79, a retired florist from Kentucky. She was a delightful woman with a keen memory and the kindest smile. 5 years ago, after hip surgery made lying flat too uncomfortable, she started sleeping in her recliner. Just until the pain goes away, she'd told herself. But the pain persisted, and gradually, the recliner became her permanent bed. She'd wake up stiff but managed, until one morning her daughter found her still in the chair, disoriented and barely able to move her left hand. She hadn't experienced a single symptom, no warning whatsoever. Yet a scan revealed she'd suffered a lacunar stroke. A small, deep stroke caused by a clot lodged within one of the brain's minuscule vessels. She had no significant heart condition, no atrial fibrillation. What she did have was compromised circulation from years of sleeping upright. Her legs would swell, her ankles often felt tight, and every morning she'd feel dizzy upon leaving that chair. In hindsight, the warning signs were present, but she, like so many, never conceived that a recliner could quietly transform into a stroke trap. Here's the medical reality. Sleeping upright diminishes the effectiveness of the baroflex, your body's inherent system for regulating blood pressure. During flat sleep, your brain and heart communicate more effortlessly to maintain balanced pressure. But when you're upright, particularly if tilted forward or slightly twisted, that reflex weakens, resulting in blood pressure instability. And for seniors, this situation becomes precarious. Factor in medications, dehydration, or compression from tight socks or swelling, and you're simultaneously confronting multiple risk factors, all while believing you're simply enjoying a comfortable night's rest. So, if you routinely sleep in a recliner or frequently nap in that chair, consider this your urgent wake-up call. Sleep isn't merely about rest, it's about strategically positioning your body to safeguard your brain. If you absolutely must sleep elevated, opt for a hospital-style adjustable bed, or a firm wedge that raises your torso without compressing your lower limbs. And make sure to stretch and move your legs regularly to promote healthy circulation. Barbara now sleeps in a bed once more, with her head slightly elevated and a body pillow supporting her hip. She often tells me, "I believed I was simplifying things for myself. I never imagined I was actually making them more hazardous." So many assume the risk lies in excessive movement. However, for seniors, the true danger often comes from remaining motionless in an improper position for extended periods. But if you suspect a recliner could restrict blood flow, just wait until you understand. What occurs when you sleep on your preferred side with your arm trapped beneath your pillow? It feels natural, deeply comforting, yet it might be the single most detrimental sleeping position. Allow me to clarify why. Fifth, sleeping on your right side with your arm tucked under the pillow. Potentially the most perilous position. Millions find solace in this posture, particularly older adults. It feels instinctual, deeply reassuring. You lie on your right side, nestle a soft pillow under your head, perhaps even cushion another between your knees, and out of habit, slide your arm underneath. You then drift into sleep, assuming you're resting just as you have for decades. But as a brain specialist, I must inform you that this is arguably the most hazardous sleeping position one observes among seniors. Not because it induces pain, but because it subtly constricts blood flow to your brain night after night, potentially elevating your stroke risk precisely when you believe you're at your most secure. Let's analyze this. When you lie on your right side, particularly with your arm wedged beneath your head or pillow, you're directly exerting pressure on vital arteries and veins in your neck and shoulder, including the carotid and subclavian arteries. These are critical conduits, the highways carrying blood to and from your brain. However, when they are compressed for prolonged periods, flow decelerates, blood accumulates, veins become constricted, arteries narrow, and in the quiet stillness of sleep, stagnant blood begins to thicken. It forms blood clots. That clot might remain in place for hours until you shift in the early morning. As your blood pressure rises with the sunrise, the clot dislodges, travels upward, and in mere seconds, your brain is starved of oxygen. Allow me to introduce Mr. Ellis Randall, a 75-year-old Vietnam veteran from North Carolina. Strong-willed and fiercely independent, he often quipped that he could still outpace his grandson. Every night, Ellis slept on his right side, a habit he'd maintained since his military service. He'd curl his arm beneath his pillow for neck support. One morning, he told me, his wife found him partially out of bed, dazed and unable to move his left leg. He was rushed to the emergency room, where scans disclosed a right hemisphere stroke, triggered by a clot in his middle cerebral artery. But Ellis didn't have high cholesterol, wasn't diabetic, and didn't smoke. So, where did this clot originate? As we reviewed his daily habits, it became evident. Persistent pressure on his right side, combined with years of sleeping on that arm, had compromised his vascular flow. An ultrasound revealed narrowing of the carotid artery, and because he had unknowingly restricted blood flow for hours each night, a clot silently formed in his sleep, striking just before dawn. Ellis survived, yet his mobility is now diminished. He walks with the brace and undergoes weekly therapy to regain his coordination. He once quietly remarked to me, "I never knew my sleeping position could betray me like that." Here's the stark truth. This position doesn't exclusively impact arteries. It also compresses the brachial plexus, a crucial bundle of nerves extending through your shoulder and down your arm. When this nerve cluster is squeezed under your body weight, the nerves don't merely go numb. They transmit distress signals to your brain, potentially disrupting your sleep cycle without your awareness. Over time, this inadequate circulation and chronic nerve stress can contribute to microvascular damage, the kind that silently accumulates until it suddenly gives way. Older adults are particularly susceptible because, with age, blood vessels stiffen and narrow. Blood becomes more viscous. Recovery from restricted flow takes longer, and nerve resilience declines. So, if you've been sleeping on your right side, especially with your arm tucked underneath, it's time for a critical change. Not for comfort, but because of potentially life-altering consequences. Try shifting to your left side with your head gently elevated and your arms resting forward or alongside your body, never underneath. Use a contoured pillow to maintain proper neck alignment and reduce pressure on vital vessels. Even one minor adjustment could protect your independence, your memory, your capacity to embrace your family, walk your dog, or utter your grandchild's name. You might not perceive the damage as it occurs, but your brain registers it, your blood flow records it, and eventually, your body will react. Because what you remain unaware of while you sleep can fundamentally alter everything upon waking. But if you believe sleeping on your arm is risky, just wait until we discuss what transpires when your body tosses and turns throughout the night, and how this very restlessness might be a critical red flag your brain is attempting to send before disaster strikes. Let me explain the implications. Number 6. Frequent tossing and turning. Frequent tossing and turning, a sign of poor sleep quality. As we age, a certain type of restlessness often emerges. The inability to remain asleep, frequent awakenings, the incessant shifting from one side to the other. You might attribute this to typical aging, arthritis, or needing to use the restroom. But what if I told you that this pattern of constant tossing and turning throughout the night could actually be a profound warning signal from your brain, and worse, a direct trigger for a stroke? As a neurologist, I've come to understand sleep not merely as a time for recharging, but as a critical period when the brain actively restores blood flow, balances pressure, and eliminates toxins. When this vital process is repeatedly disrupted, particularly in older adults, the consequences can be subtly devastating. Every time you make a sudden movement in bed, rolling over, shifting your head, adjusting your neck, you're temporarily altering the blood flow to and from your brain. For a healthy 30-year-old, this might be inconsequential, but at 70 or 80, with stiffened arteries, constricted veins, and delicate vessel walls, each of these motions can induce brief intervals of reduced circulation. Factor in low nighttime hydration, diminished oxygen levels, or underlying blood pressure problems, and your risk dramatically elevates. What's even more alarming, however, is what we're now beginning to comprehend. Frequent movement during sleep may not simply be a byproduct of poor rest. It could, in fact, be your brain desperately gasping for equilibrium. Let me tell you about Mrs. Nancy Delgado, a 76-year-old retired piano teacher from Colorado. She was always astute, graceful, and meticulous, the type of woman who still ironed her pillowcases. But for months, Nancy had been waking up utterly exhausted, despite believing she was getting 7 hours of sleep. Her husband observed she seemed to fidget constantly in bed, turning from side to side every 10 to 15 minutes. Initially, they dismissed it as normal aging. Then came the headaches, followed by early morning dizziness. And one night, she woke with her right hand numb and her speech slurred. In the ER, imaging revealed she'd suffered a small ischemic stroke, likely hours before she awoke. The underlying cause, her sleep study and vascular scan, indicated a combination of compromised sleep quality and intermittent hypoperfusion, temporary reductions in brain blood flow that coincided with her restless movements. Over time, this erratic circulation resulted in blood pooling in her neck vessels, eventually forming dangerous blood clots. These clots weren't due to high cholesterol or a cardiac condition. They originated from her interrupted, unstable sleep. The kind that deceives you into thinking you're resting while your brain is under relentless assault. Nancy's story is far more prevalent than we often realize. For seniors especially, this type of fragmented sleep presents multiple dangers. First, it prevents your blood pressure from stabilizing, whereas normal deep sleep gently lowers blood pressure in a controlled, restorative manner. Second, it keeps your cortisol levels elevated, which can result in overnight blood pressure spikes, a primary trigger for morning strokes. Third, it disrupts the glymphatic system, the brain's natural cleanup crew, leading to long-term vascular inflammation. Finally, it generates constant fluctuations in cerebral perfusion, the pressure necessary to maintain blood flow through the brain's intricate capillaries. These aren't merely medical terms. They are urgent, early warning signs your body has been whispering to you all night long. Waking up drenched in sweat, gasping for air, or feeling your heart pound. That's your brain signaling distress. Tingling in your hands, feelings of imbalance, or a stiff neck in the morning. These aren't just minor age-related nuisances. They could very well be your body pleading for improved sleep positioning, better hydration, and optimized circulation. So, what steps can you take? Begin by addressing your restlessness as a symptom, not merely a habit. Avoid late-day caffeine or alcohol. Keep your room cool and dark, opting for layered bedding instead of a single heavy sheet. Use a body pillow to cushion your joints and prevent unconscious jerking movements. Most importantly, consult your doctor about a sleep study if you or your partner observe frequent awakenings or excessive movement in bed. Nancy now sleeps with a soft cervical pillow, keeps water readily accessible by her bedside, and practices slow breathing exercises before retiring. Her recovery has been gradual, but she emphasizes, "I used to believe waking up tired was normal. I didn't grasp it was a warning I was disregarding every single night." And she is absolutely right, because when sleep transforms into a battlefield, your body bears the scars. But there's another insidious, silent threat that often partners with compromised sleep, one frequently overlooked because it begins before bedtime. It starts the moment you either forget or intentionally bypass something absolutely critical. A dose of medication, a tiny pill, a simple routine. That single oversight could be the only barrier between you and a life-altering stroke. Let's discuss what occurs when you omit your heart or blood pressure medication before sleep. If you're still watching and finding these insights valuable, please comment one below to let me know you're present. Now, Let's continue with point number 7. Sleeping after skipping blood pressure or heart medication. For many older adults, the ritual of taking daily medications becomes deeply ingrained. Until that one night when you forget, or perhaps you feel well and tell yourself, just this once, it won't make a difference. Maybe the bottle's empty, or you're simply tired, or concerned about potential side effects. So, you bypass that small pill designed to manage your blood pressure or regulate your heart rhythm. What you might not grasp is that a single missed dose, particularly before sleep, can transform into a silent peril while you rest. And for seniors, this hazard can manifest as something irreversible, a stroke that arrives before dawn, without any prior warning. Allow me to explain why. Your blood pressure adheres to a natural circadian rhythm, typically rising in the morning and dipping at night. This dipping is how your body resets. However, if you have hypertension, atrial fibrillation, or any underlying cardiovascular condition, your body cannot effectively regulate this rhythm on its own. That's precisely why medications are prescribed, to maintain stability when your system struggles. But when you skip your evening dose, especially if it's a beta blocker, calcium channel blocker, ACE inhibitor, or anticoagulant, something profoundly alarming transpires. Your blood pressure can surge overnight, often between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., precisely when most strokes occur. Your heart might race or become erratic, and if your vessels are already narrowed by age, cholesterol, or inflammation, that abrupt surge in pressure can cause blood to pool, stagnate, and ultimately form clots. Clots that won't remain silent for long. Let me share the story of Mr. Harold Green, a 72-year-old retired electrician from Wisconsin. He was exceptionally diligent about his health, took regular walks, ate sensibly, and never smoked. He had mild hypertension, and his doctor prescribed a low-dose medication to be taken just once nightly. One evening, Harold was engrossed in a ball game, became distracted, and forgot his pill. He rationalized it, thinking, it's no big deal. I'll take it in the morning. But he never got that opportunity. The next day, Harold awoke, feeling peculiar. His wife noticed a subtle change in his facial appearance. He attempted to speak, but the words wouldn't form. Within the hour, he was hospitalized, having suffered a moderate ischemic stroke. Doctors discovered a small clot in the left hemisphere of his brain, likely formed during the early morning hours when his blood pressure surged unchecked, a direct consequence of the missed medication. The most tragic part: Harold had no concept. The risk was so immediate, he assumed one skipped dose couldn't cause significant harm. However, in older adults, where arteries are less elastic and blood naturally thickens with age, it can indeed be the critical tipping point. Physiologically, here's the mechanism. Blood pressure medication functions by alleviating stress on your heart and blood vessels. When that medication is omitted, the protective barrier vanishes. Pressure mounts, the delicate lining of your arteries becomes irritated. Platelets, the minuscule cells that facilitate blood clotting, become hyperactive. And wherever there's intense pressure and turbulence, a clot is highly probable to form. For seniors, the margin for error is razor thin. A single skipped pill can spell the difference between a tranquil night and a morning that irrevocably alters your life. Harold is now recovering through therapy, but he adheres to a strict medication schedule. No exceptions. He carries a pill reminder in his pocket and, during a follow-up visit, confided in me, "One night cost me my words. I won't allow it to cost me anything more." If you take blood pressure or heart medications, including low-dose aspirin or blood thinners, take them without fail. Set a reminder, ask a loved one to check in. Keep a backup pill organizer by your bedside, because at this juncture in life, your brain depends on routine even more than your memory does. And remember, it's not only about what you do to protect yourself, it's about what you failed to do, even just once. That can undo years of diligent effort. But what if the danger isn't internal, but originates from your immediate environment? From the cold air caressing your neck as you sleep, or the inadequate support beneath your head? What transpires when you sleep in a chilled room without proper neck support? You might be astonished at how rapidly it can impact your brain, and it has absolutely nothing to do with mere comfort. 8th, sleeping in cold rooms without adequate neck support. We frequently associate crisp, cool nights with superior sleep. That invigorating air, the refreshing sheets, the way your body instinctively curls for warmth beneath a blanket. Many older adults even lower their thermostat significantly, convinced it's healthier or more energy efficient. But what if that cold room, particularly when paired with inadequate neck support, was doing more than simply making you shiver? What if it was silently constricting blood flow to your brain, tightening your arteries, and elevating your stroke risk while you sleep? Most seniors are unaware of this, but sleep temperature and posture profoundly influence your vascular system. As we age, our bodies become less efficient at regulating heat, especially at night. A cold environment triggers vasoconstriction, the narrowing of blood vessels. This effect is most critical when it happens in the neck, where two vital arteries, the carotid and vertebral arteries, deliver oxygen-rich blood to your brain. Now, envision your neck slightly bent at an improper angle on a soft pillow, or worse, completely unsupported. This subtle misalignment, coupled with cold-induced vasoconstriction, significantly reduces blood flow to the brain. In an aging body, where vessels are already stiffened and blood circulates more slowly, this establishes a lethal combination: restricted flow, pooling blood, and dangerous clot formation. Let me share the case of Miss Loretta Dixon, a 78-year-old retired nurse from Montana. She was as mentally acute as ever, brimming with stories and keen wit. Loretta had always favored a cool bedroom, sleeping with her window slightly ajar, even in winter. Her routine was to curl up snugly, her neck subtly tucked into her chest, with only a thin, flat pillow under her head. She believed this was both normal and healthy. Then one morning, she didn't awaken as she usually did. Her son found her partially alert, yet unable to focus her gaze. Her speech was garbled, and she couldn't sit up unaided. At the hospital, scans revealed a brainstem stroke, a particularly severe type, caused by a clot in the posterior circulation, the area supplied by the vertebral arteries, which ascend along the spine and through the neck. There was no heart disease, no smoking history, no missed medication. However, there was one probable culprit: chronic neck compression and cold-induced vasospasm during sleep. Over time, these two elements had diminished blood flow just enough for a clot to form, which then migrated into the brain's most vulnerable region. Loretta is now undergoing physical therapy. She walks with assistance and experiences difficulty swallowing, a painful testament that what we dismiss as minor discomfort can irrevocably alter our lives in a single night. Cold temperatures constrict vessels. Inadequate neck support misaligns them. Together, they subtly diminish oxygen delivery to the brain, particularly during the early morning hours when blood pressure naturally surges. If your brain is underoxygenated and your vessels are already constricted, even a minute clot can inflict devastating damage. Here's another crucial detail many people overlook. A significant number of seniors already experience some degree of cervical spondylosis, age-related changes in the neck spine. When this is combined with poor pillow support in a cool room, the risk of compromised blood flow to the brain intensifies dramatically. So, what steps should you take? Maintain your room's temperature as cool, but not frigid. The optimal sleep temperature for older adults typically ranges from 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. Ensure your neck is correctly supported. Utilize a medium firm pillow that keeps your head aligned with your spine, not angled downward or sharply turned to one side. Avoid sleeping with your chin pressed into your chest or your head cocked. These minor adjustments might appear insignificant, but they represent acts of vital protection, a way to ensure your brain remains nourished throughout the night. Loretta recently shared with me, "I never imagined something so simple. The cold, my pillow, could harm my brain. I simply didn't know." And that is indeed the most terrifying aspect. So many seniors remain unaware. They're engaging in habits that feel natural, routines they've practiced for years, without recognizing that the aging body operates under entirely different rules. However, sometimes the danger doesn't reside in your sleeping position. Instead, it stems from what you did just before closing your eyes. Because our final habit might be the most profoundly misunderstood. What transpires when you retire immediately after a heavy meal or one too many drinks? What impact do alcohol and late-night digestion truly have on your heart, your blood pressure, and your brain while you rest? Let me guide you through this, because this last point could be the concealed trigger that pushes everything to the brink. Ninth, sleeping immediately after heavy drinking or a large meal. Many of us carry the common misconception into our later years that a full stomach and a glass of wine promote better sleep. That sensation of warmth, comfort, and winding down the day with a substantial dinner and a nightcap. It is a cherished ritual in countless American homes. But as a neurologist, I need to impart something you might never have heard. Retiring directly after a heavy meal or alcohol consumption can silently trigger the type of stroke that strips you of everything: your speech, your memory, your independence. Before you even realize what occurred, the aging body processes food, alcohol, and stress profoundly differently than it once did. What once offered comfort can now become a quiet peril. When you consume a large, fatty meal late at night, especially one high in sodium or sugar, your digestive system labors intensely. Blood is then diverted from the brain to the gut. This dip in brain circulation might not feel dramatic, but if your arteries are already narrowed by age, the repercussions can be severe. Introduce alcohol into this scenario, and you've just engineered a perfect storm. Initially, alcohol acts as a vasodilator, widening blood vessels. That's why your face might flush or you feel drowsy after a drink. But as its effects diminish, your vessels abruptly constrict again. Blood pressure surges. Your heart works harder to stabilize itself. In older adults, this sudden change can lead to arrhythmias, sharp blood pressure fluctuations, and inadequate oxygen delivery to the brain. All factors that silently elevate your stroke risk, especially during sleep when you are most vulnerable. Let me share the experience of Mr. Gerald Thompson, a 74-year-old retired farmer from Nebraska. A man of immense discipline and resilience, Gerald found his simple joy in his evening routine. Dinner at 7 p.m., a glass of bourbon at 8 p.m., and bed by 8:30 p.m. One winter night, he indulged in a holiday feast: turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, pie, and his customary drink. He felt utterly satisfied, even content. But that night, everything changed. Around 4 a.m., his wife awakened to find him cold and unresponsive. He was rushed to the emergency room, where a CT scan revealed a massive ischemic stroke in his frontal lobe, caused by a clot that had formed and traveled during the night. Doctors found no signs of atrial fibrillation, no recent infection, no missed medication. What they did discover were elevated post-meal triglyceride levels, dehydrated blood, and constricted vessels from alcohol rebound. That precise combination had reduced circulation to the brain just long enough for a clot to form silently and fatally. Gerald survived, but the stroke stole his ability to speak. His wife, now his full-time caregiver, told me tearfully, "We thought we were doing everything right. We never imagined dinner and a drink could take him from me." The reality is, digestion and alcohol actively compete with your brain for vital resources. After age 60, the digestive system naturally slows, meaning food remains in the stomach longer, drawing blood away from the brain for extended periods. Alcohol further dehydrates the blood and can severely disrupt the natural heart rhythm. Combined, these two forces create unstable blood pressure, encourage clot formation, and diminish cerebral perfusion, especially during the early morning cortisol surge when strokes most frequently occur. If you choose to drink, do so in strict moderation, ideally earlier in the day. If you enjoy a full meal, allow at least 2 to 3 hours before lying down. Drink water with your dinner. Absolutely avoid salty, greasy, or sugary foods late at night. And never mistake drowsiness for genuinely healthy sleep. Alcohol-induced sleep is fragmented and detrimental to brain function. This isn't about never again savoring a meal or a drink. It's about honoring what your body requires at this life stage. You've worked diligently to live well. Don't let a simple dinner routine undermine all you've built. Because when it comes to stroke, the threat doesn't always manifest with pain or obvious warning. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, shrouded in comfort, disguised as everyday routine. Now that we've uncovered the 9 most perilous sleeping habits that could drastically elevate your overnight stroke risk, you might be asking, what does truly safe sleep entail? What actionable changes can I implement starting tonight? Not just for better rest, but to safeguard my brain for years to come. Let's consolidate everything. I'll guide you through the habits that heal, not harm, because genuine prevention starts with awareness, and the power to transform your health rests entirely with you. Your final wake-up call. Sleep isn't merely rest. It's vital protection. If you've stayed with me this long, I want to extend my sincere gratitude, not just for watching, but for caring deeply enough to truly understand how sleep can subtly influence your brain's health. What you've just absorbed isn't meant to instill fear. It's about empowerment. The kind of power derived from awareness, from comprehending what quietly transpires within your body as the world sleeps. At this juncture in life, knowledge isn't just beneficial, it's absolutely crucial for safeguarding your well-being. And every decision you make now, regardless of how minor, carries far greater significance than it did decades ago. We've explored 9 silent habits that, on the surface, might appear benign. positions of comfort, ingrained routines, decisions driven by pain or exhaustion. Yet, each possesses the potential to gradually, subtly propel your brain toward significant risk. Sleeping flat without a pillow, face down, in a recliner, under a thick blanket, or on your preferred arm. Frequent tossing and turning. Missing your medication, sleeping in a cold room without neck support, or retiring with a full stomach and a drink. Each of these behaviors, over time, establishes conditions conducive for blood to stagnate, thicken, and clot. And in a body already experiencing the natural transformations of aging. Stiffened arteries, more sluggish circulation, reduced oxygen supply. These clots aren't merely possible, they are highly probable. But here's the most vital truth I can impart as a medical professional. The vast majority of strokes that occur during sleep are preventable. Let that sink in. They are not inevitable. They are not arbitrary. They frequently arise from routines we've never challenged, signals from our body we've disregarded, or comfort habits that simply no longer serve us as we grow older. Therefore, if there's one pivotal message I hope you take away from this, it is this. You still retain control. You still possess the profound ability to transform how you sleep, how you nurture your brain, and how you secure your future, because sleep isn't merely rest. Sleep is the crucial period when your brain regenerates blood flow, purges toxins, balances hormones, and prepares for a new day. Sleep is when your brain is most susceptible, but also when it's most receptive to healing, if you allow it. Start tonight. Gently elevate your head. Sleep on your left side if possible. Provide proper neck support. Skip the late-night drinks and substantial meals. Take your medications unfailingly. Select breathable bedding. Hydrate. Cultivate a sleep environment that respects the years you've lived and the vibrant life you still aspire to enjoy. These aren't radical alterations, they are subtle, yet impactful shifts. And in a world filled with elements beyond our control, this aspect of your health, where your nightly decisions truly matter, is entirely within your grasp. You are absolutely not too old to change. You are not too far along to safeguard yourself, and it is never too late to master the art of sleeping, not just for comfort, but for sheer survival. As I frequently tell my patients, it's not merely about how long you sleep, it's about how wisely you sleep. So tonight, as you draw back the covers and lay your head down, genuinely ask yourself, is the way I'm sleeping helping my brain, or is it causing harm? Because when you prioritize protecting your sleep, you safeguard everything, your speech, your memory, your balance, your independence. You protect the very core essence of who you are, and that, unequivocally, is always worth the effort. These insights are intended to inspire you to live fully and authentically. Now, I'd truly appreciate hearing from you. Please take a moment to reflect and share one key takeaway you've learned and plan to integrate into your own life. Let's foster a supportive community on this journey toward embracing these vital truths. If you found this video beneficial, please leave a comment with 1. If it wasn't what you hoped for, feel free to comment with 0. Your feedback is incredibly valuable to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and here's to confidently living life on your own terms.